I know, one a week is all I ask. All right, so we're going to continue on with our Contact Us page, right? We had a Contact Us page where we started filling out our form and started trying to make this sticky, right? So we got some data. We get data from the params hash, and we store it in instance variables that then we can use back on the form again. So we can use that data to determine if we're sticky or not. All right, so let's go look at this. We had set our text field tag. This name was set in the controller to the value that it got from the params hash. So that makes this text field sticky. So when I run that, just as a review, and I put in a name, my name stays with the form, right? We're nice and sticky here. All right? Same with the email address that we did. So then we were going to move on and talk about text areas and some other elements of the form that we need. So while we're doing this, for debugging purposes, I want to print out the value of the params hash. How would I print out the value of what's in the params hash? I could do it params.each, right? And since it's a hash, so key value, I could do that. And then I could print out the value of the key and then append that with something like this, just so it looks different, and append that with the value, right? And I can put that, add a break tag. Actually, I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to put a /n. And then we have our end of the loop indented all correctly. All right, so now we have an end for our each loop. So that's one way to do it. And what I might do then is put a pre-tag here around this so that it prints out nicely and I don't have to worry about formatting it. This /n then will be taken into account. And let's see what that looks like. That's beautiful. Look at that. So I've got a nice little debugging option that shows me all the data from the params hash. I've got my controller action, the commit because I hit this question button here, and my name was filled in with something because I had something here. Email was blank because I didn't have anything blank here. All right. So this might be useful as we go through to print out to see what the data that I have here. Now, would I leave that in my production that you submit to me? No. This should not show up on your website. So take this out before you submit it to me. This is for debugging only. So let's put a comment here. Debugging only. All right. So let's continue on with some of the other tags. So how do you think I would do a Textarea tag? There you go. Text. They call it a Textarea tag. All right. And we give it the same kind of information. What do we want to call it? What's the name of this? We're going to call it our question. And we're going to pass back in the default value of a question. All right?
The second question makes it sticky.
This will make it sticky when I fill that in. Right now it has nothing in it. And I set that in my controller now. So that sets the value of this Textarea tag. So I go back to my controller and I set my question instance variable to be the params of the question name. And let's go see what that looks like. All right, so I've got a nice little text area here. It's nice and little, so we need to fix that. And I'm going to take out this carriage return here because it looks like this is already giving me a carriage return. This is like doing a puts. So I'm going to take that out, and I think this will be smaller and closer together. Oh, yeah, that's beautiful right there. All right? So when I type something in here and I hit ask a question, it becomes sticky because I got that data from the params, stored it in my question instance variable, and used that question instance variable in my view as the default value for that form element. All right? Everybody got that? That's exactly the same as in PHP for those that were just in PHP a couple hours ago. Same exact thing, right? Yeah, it's just syntax, just a little different.
No, I just wasted 5 minutes trying to find the file while it looking to show me the stuff I typed in earlier.
All right, so let's modify our question in here. Let's put a break tag before my submit tag because I want that to be on its own line. And let's go look at the elements for the Textarea tag. All right, let's go look at the API for that. I want you guys to get used to using this. And let's look at it. And there are some other things that I can set. I can set the rows and the columns. So to make it bigger, just like I can do in HTML. This just lets me set that in one parameter. I can say size, where the columns are first and the rows are second, which I always get backwards. I don't know why they came up with columns first, but it's weird to me. I always think of rows first, but it's backwards. So if I want 25 columns by 10 rows, I could use the size option. So I can just add that, append that to my method here. Size is a string containing the number of columns, and I want maybe 50 columns by 10 rows. And now when I reload my page, I've got a nice bigger text area box that they can fill in.
I was going to point out that Excel uses columns, not rows.
Say that again?
Excel
Oh,
specifies a column first.
that's why. Maybe that's why they do that. I always think of rows first. And the reason is, in a double array, you put the rows first, right? The rows are first, the columns are second. So I don't know. Anyway, that's what you do. All right, so I can either split it up into rows and columns or have this size variable that does it all for me. All right, so I've shown how to do a text area as sticky. What's the next thing? We need a checkbox. Oh, you want a label? All right, we'll give it a label.
Okay, you invented that, don't worry.
Label tag for my question. And we're going to say, enter your question. All right, so let's see what that looks like. There you go. Enter your question. It goes here. So I would put a break tag here again. I'd love to format with break tags, right? All right, so we break that. Make it look good again. Nice. Is that beautiful? All right. There's.
Those label tags actually are creating key tags in your source.
Let's go look. So here's my label. No, it actually creates a label tag. So it is a label HTML tag. Yeah. All right. All right, so there's another. There you go. Got to be quick. Got to type faster than me. I said no whining. No whining. This is a no whining Tuesday. No whining Tuesday. All right, I want to show you some cool things that I can put that work with HTML5. I can have some data called a placeholder. And that's a standard HTML option. I can say placeholder and give it some text. Enter your name. All right? And what this does is, as you'll see, if I reload my page without going to posting, it puts inside the text box this little enter your name. That's a placeholder. Now watch when I click on this text. It's not something I can select, right? It's just grayed out, and I can start typing over the top of that. Isn't that nice? So that if I clear that and I go to the next field, it goes back to whatever the placeholder was. And if I have this as sticky and I submit this, then it's going to keep my actual value above the placeholder. Isn't that nice? Placeholder is a nice new HTML tag. And all that does, if I look at the source, would be to put, I'm trying to keep it off the way there for you, would be to keep the, put this placeholder equals and this string in here. That's all this is doing. All right? It's an attribute of the text field input tag, right?
Can you do that with email also?
Yes. So these are tags. I can just add a placeholder here. Placeholder looks at something you could do, even give him a hint, like something at domain.com. And now my still it hasn't come back. No, I lost my proxy again already. It's not my fault. Yeah, they're getting quicker. It's now, see, it's sooner. It's 10 to 11. Randomly. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Sorry, guys. Look at that. Got a nice little something at domain.com that will fill in with whatever I type instead to be sticky. All right? Isn't that cool?
Does focus do to that? Mess it all up?
No. You mean just like tabbing to it or something?
No, if you set focus in your HTML.
Doesn't do anything. It just like I clicked here, my focus is now here. It doesn't change it.
I mean, if you set focus in your HTML.
To this one? No, it shouldn't affect it. I knew you'd ask that. I'm sure there is. I don't know. So it's not something I use. So there probably is a focus. Not shown here, but let's try it.
It's an HTML5 attribute.
Yeah, so let's try focus is what? True? Is it a true or false?
I think it's on and off.
So let's see what that does. All right, enough. I got to have more room here. This is crazy. So it didn't put the focus here, so it must be something else. I must have that wrong. You can look at the source, and it will actually put that in there. It sets whatever you want as additional attributes into your folder. So I can add anything I want. So it's very future-friendly. As they add more attributes to HTML5, I can just add those by calling this key value pair to that. So what would it be?
I just looked it up. It's autofocus
like this. So it'd be the string.
You just need an equal in between there.
Well, again, remember, I'm passing this into my program, into my text field method. So it will convert that into, so if I reload this, this should say autofocus equals autofocus. Is that what it's supposed to be then? Okay, so good. So now if I reload this, now look at that. So you want it here though, right? So let's take this out. And it doesn't. It doesn't. It does put my cursor right there though. Beautiful. All right, good question. Good stuff. All right, let's do a checkbox then. A checkbox. How do you think I do a checkbox? Checkbox tag. We give it a name. We call it newsletter. And we pass it in a value. And let's close that, all right? So let's go look at the checkbox tag in the API. Seriously, you guys have to type faster. There. It's the same structure as what we've typed 3 times today. It's really simple. Really simple. Jeez, you guys are pitiful.
If you just put your code on the wiki for us, it would save a lot of problems for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, it would save you. Why don't I just do your homework for you? That would work good.
We'd like that.
The problem why I can't show both screens is that the recording only records one screen. So I have to have everything on this stupid little small screen. If I open these both up and distribute my screen, you would never see my browser. So I can't do that. If you ever want to watch my recordings, you've got to suffer through that. Too bad. Suck it up. All right, so I have, for my checkbox tag, I'm giving it the name, and I passed in a name as a symbol, and then we give it the value that's going to come back as the second parameter. That's the second value, what I want to see in my params hash. And then the third value would be whether or not it's checked. All right? So true would be checked or not. All right? So the value that I want to come back is always going to be something like newsletter. All right? So let's just run this and see what I get in my params now. I'm waiting. Well, I'm going to have to load it again. Where did it go? There it is. Hey, here's my little checkbox. So I need to have some text here, right? Obviously, some text. So subscribe to my newsletter, and we'll put a break tag here. Reload that sucker. And now it'll be under my text area box. Nice. So when I submit this, let's see what shows up here. Without it checked, and I ask the question, do I see my newsletter up here at all? All gone, right? That's because browsers are not required to send anything if a checkbox is not selected. The default action that a browser sends only happens if you select the text box.
I think you should select it for it.
Well, we'll get there. So I'm going to ask the question with it selected. Now I get newsletter back as the key in my params hash, and the value that I passed, which was this newsletter string, as the value. All right, so newsletter equals newsletter. All right, so now how do I make something sticky? It's gone, right? If I check this and I ask the question, my stickiness is gone. How do I make that sticky? I have to, this third parameter has to be a Boolean, whether it's true or not. if it's true, it's checked. If it's false, it's not checked. So this newsletter instance variable has to be assigned. And where do I assign my instance variables? Which class? It is a class. My controller, there we go. I think we need to take the quiz again. All right, here's the controller. So somehow, yeah, I've got to get this newsletter to be some Boolean. Right? So how do I do that? Okay, right? False, that's always going to be false, right? But I want to base it based on whether or not they checked it already, right?
You have to look at the parameters.
I'm going to have to look in the params. Okay, so we're getting closer. So I'm going to look in my newsletter key. Now that's not going to assign it as a true or false, though.
Can't you do a key value pair?
That is a key value pair.
Params newsletter equals what? It's going to be true or false.
No, it's not. Remember, what did I get when I typed my params? I got the string newsletter back because that's the value of that checkbox. There you go. That might work. So this by itself is a Boolean expression, right? That will return true or false, which gets stuffed into my newsletter, which now my newsletter is going to be used in my text box, my checkbox tag here. So that's either going to be true or false. All right, so I'll put that back while I reload. I have to prove that. Well, I'm going to show you right here. Make this a little smaller. All right, so we ask our question. I hit subscribe. I want to subscribe. It comes through. I get back newsletter. That's valid. And lo and behold, it's still sticky. So if I uncheck it, remember you have to test both sides of this. It stays unchecked. So I've now officially made my checkbox sticky. Isn't that great? That's all it was to it. Go back to my contact us page. All right. So this format follows. We've done this now 3 times. We have the text area. We pass in the name of it and that default value. And in this case, it's a little different. We need to pass in a value that gets sent back to my form processing, and then we also have to tell whether it's checked or not. All right? So any questions on that? No questions? All right. Radio buttons. So what do you think a radio button would look like? Radio button tag. All right, good. And we give it the name of our radio button. And I'm going to use gender because that worked out really good. I'm going to call my radio button gender. And the default for this one is going to be male. And then I need another radio button. Remember that radio buttons are tied together, right? They have the same name so that you can have one or the other selected, right? If you make the name in HTML of the radio button the same, I can only select one of those 2 radio buttons. So I call this the same thing, gender. But the value of it is going to be female instead. Make it nicely male. All right? So let's see what that prints out. So I've got my nice 2 little radio buttons here. What's wrong with that? They're not labeled, right? I need to have something here, so I'm just going to type male and a break, and female and a break. Yeah, I might as well have a break up here. Now you guys could put this all in a nice table and do whatever you want with it. I use breaks. That just is easier for me. So now I've got a male and a female. If I select one of them and I ask my question again, let's see what gets put back into my params list. So my gender comes back as male when I selected male. If I select female, my gender comes back as female. All right? So let's go look at the API for our radio button tag. Radio button tag. And it has the same thing. It's got the name, the value, and a true or false to see if it's checked or not. Okay, so in order to maintain stickiness, we have to pass some value here to make it sticky, right? So this should be either true or false. So I'm going to use a variable. And for this one, I'm going to be calling it male. And this one, I'm going to call it female. Now, the reason I'm using two is that,
They're two individual options.
right, they're two separate ones. So if female is true, this one has got to be false. If male is true, this one has to be false. So I have to set both of these based on the parameter that I get back from the params hash. All right, everybody with me on that? So in my params hash, in my controller, I'm going to do something similar. I need to get the gender from the params. Gender, that's the name of my key for both of those radio buttons. So what is gender going to have in it? Yes.
Well, right now that's
I don't necessarily need an @ sign. That's just a local variable now. If I made it an @ sign, it would be available in my view, and I don't want that. I'm not going to use that variable. Okay, so I'm just using it as an interim place to store a variable. All right, it's nothing special. So what is gender going to have in it? Male or female, the word, the string, male or female, right? So now my male has got to be a true or false, right? It's got to be true or false. So how do I make male true or false based on what this has in it? A Boolean expression, right? So similar to what we did here, I can do, does gender equal male? Question mark raising my voice. If that's a Boolean expression, if that's true, it's going to be set to true. If this is false, this is going to be set to false, right? So I do the same thing for female. I add an FE to each of these. Female. And that's the same thing. This is a Boolean expression assigned to a variable. All right? Now, I don't have to have this interim variable here. I could just put param subgender here twice. But I just did that to show you,
You're so fancy.
it's easier to understand, I think, this way. I mean, drier would be to put this in here, right? That would be a little slight. I would remove this whole line of code. All right? So let's see if that works. So let's select male. Ask my question. Male is still selected. What? Ask my females. Female still selected. Is that sweet? Everything is nice and sticky. Beautiful stuff. Absolutely cool. Isn't that great? Nice. Any questions on that? So you get the concept that I have to have some way to store what they sent me so that I can use it back on the same form when I redisplay it to the user. That's the concept of stickiness, right? I have to store what they gave me to use it back in the same form. All right? So I would have to do that for everything that was on my form. All right, what's the one thing we haven't done yet that you guys have to do with your assignment? Has anybody even looked at the assignments yet? What? No?
Let's look at the assignment.
Yeah, why don't you?
Just like that word, destroy.
It is a select box. All right, so a select box is an option. It uses a select tag with a bunch of options in the center. So to do that in HTML, it looks something like this, right? I'll write it kind of in HTML. Select, and then inside of that I've got my options, bunch of these, oops. And this might be skis and poles and boots, etc. So that's how you would build a drop-down menu, right? So let's actually look at that. This should render correctly still. Maybe not, but there we go. So I've got skis with a bunch of blank options down here. So that's what I want to do, but I want to do it in Rails instead of straight HTML. So to build that, I need a select tag. Right? Now the select tag is a little more complicated because it's got two things it has to build. It's got to build the select tag and the inner option tags, one for each of the products or whatever I'm going to list in my pull-down menu, right? So I've got to have two things. So it requires a complicated double array in order to get this to work right, all right? So you guys knew you had to know double arrays for some reason.
Showed us this with a hash last night.
Yeah, but not in Rails. They don't do it with a hash, so it's not a select tag. Where'd it go? There we go. So this is an example of some of the select tags. Keep losing it. Here we go. Let's just make it really big. Stop! Oh my God, it just really likes that. All right, so here's my select tag. I need to have this other method called options from collection or options for select. Let's see, it's called something else. Options for select, which is another method. So here it is, options for select. Because we're not dealing with models yet, your models are a little easier to deal with than what we're doing here. So we have options for select, and we pass it a double array of the values that I want to have in there, okay? And they don't quite do it the right way here, interestingly enough. So I'm going to do that. So the select tag looks like this. I give it an ID, a name for my select tag so that I can pull it out of the params hash, and I'm going to call this product. All right? Then I need to call this options for select method. Excuse me. And this takes a double array, an array that contains an array of elements. And each element, the first element is the name that I want to show up for the user. So I might have skis here. And the second part of that is the value that I want to pass back to the user, back to the controller to tell which one they selected. So typically this is going to be the ID of the product that's in your database, but we're not there yet. So we're just going to use some hard-coded numbers. So then the next element, next option that I have might be polls, and it's going to be passed in as the ID of 2. And boots. Stop it. Boots. As an ID of 3. And then the last parameter tells it which one is selected. All right, which element do I want to have selected? Because I want this to be sticky, right? So this is based on what element would this be in an array? 0, right? So let's say we want this to be 1. So we want polls to be selected so we can see that it's different. If nothing is here, by default, the browser shows you the first option in the list of options.
That's my ID as well.
Right, index position. All right, so that's my options for select. A little complicated. Close my ERB tag. Let's put this on its own line so it shows up for you guys all in one page. There you go. So it's basically an array. Let's do it like this so you can see the arrays come out nicer. It's an array of arrays with that being part of the outside array. So it's an array containing 4 elements. Those 4 internal elements are an array, an array, an array, and a single element. So let's see what happens. Guaranteed to work. Better. All right, so I've got skis, poles, boots, and 1. So I have some problem here. Skis, poles, boots, and 1. If I select poles, then my product here comes back as the value 2. So 2 in my piece here was poles. That was correct, right? So the problem is that this should be outside as another parameter to my options for select. You guys didn't catch that?
So it's an array containing.
So let's. So now I've got my 3. I can select poles. That's interesting. It's still not. It's coming back with product as 2, which is right. Let's select skis. My product is 1, which is right. I select boots. My product should be 3, which is right. I just don't have my selection correct still. So something is wrong with my selection. And I don't know why. Maybe, well, let's go see. Let's go see what it says here. We have to look at options for select. Options for select. I guess you have to spell it right. Options for select.
Really wouldn't you just put a none as an option though in the list?
Selected. All right. So they changed it from when I was looking at it. Let's change this to a. No, didn't seem right. Let's just change it to a 2. I'm curious. So if I go and load my form from blank, yeah. So somehow it's not indexed at 0. It's indexed at 1, which doesn't make sense. Oh, let's go look.
Change your IDs to 1A, 2A.
Oh, it's because
It probably is. You're probably right. So this is, if I did it like this, then 1 would select poles again, right? So it's selecting it by the ID instead. See, I knew that. So
because in the example they had strings as the
yeah,
ID.
and so it is so that's working right. So it's the ID, sorry about that. It's selecting what value is here. So if I had strings for the value that came back, I could use a string in here. All right? So this is typically the ID, and we'll use this as the ID of the data in our database table for products later. Well, these will actually be the IDs, and it's a lot easier for a model. All right, so how do I make this sticky then? Glue. I need to change this into a variable, right? The item that was selected. So I'm going to call it product. And then in my page controller, I have to set that value to something. So my page controller, I say @product. And what do I get back in the params hash? Let's go back and look at that. Oops. Let's ask my question. Oh, nice.
What do you get back? An error.
No, I've got a...
Picture in the middle of working on it.
I know.
Just hit the back button.
Yeah, the problem is it goes back...
See what it returns right there.
All right, so it returns the ID, right, that second value in that list. So all I need to do is get that value and store it in that instance variable. So all I have to do is say, look at the params hash for the product key, and store it in my product variable here. And let's see what we get. And this might not work. All right, so I have boots. Let's go to skis, ask a question. Skis is sticky. Poles, ask a question. Poles is the second guy, so it's sticky. Look at that. Is that some beautiful stickiness right there? Boots.
You were worried for a second.
I was worried a little bit, yes. They changed too much in Rails on me.
21 after you
Have to say, right, yeah, right. All right, any questions on any of that? Isn't that fun? Lots of code there. Contact form, there you go. All right, any questions?